This episode is brought to you by It's Rapid. When great content meets AI, the impact can be truly remarkable. At It's Rapid, we've seen customers achieve outcomes like an 8x sales lift after a content refresh and 21% conversion rates on sponsored videos created with the It's Rapid AI Studio. While results vary by customer, our AI-powered creative automation platform and optics analytics help brands create, optimize, and scale content for modern commerce. Learn more at itsrapid.ai.
Welcome to Beyond the Shelf with Dave Feinlieb. This show is an open exploration of the people and process behind e-commerce. Through conversations with innovators in the space, we learn the stories of these leaders and their strategies for e-commerce success. We publish new episodes every Tuesday morning, so be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And now, here's your host, Dave Feinlieb.
Welcome back to Beyond the Shelf. My guest today is Jack Kneuper, Senior Digital Performance Marketing Manager at Perdue Farms. Jack and I sat down briefly at the WBR Commerce Media Brand Summit a few months ago. I enjoyed that conversation so much that I wanted to bring him back quickly for a full-length episode. Jack works across paid social, search, retail media, creative measurement, and reporting. When we last spoke, he shared how Perdue was using AI to automate time-consuming reporting while taking a more cautious approach to AI-generated creative and consumer trust. Today, we'll dig deeper into the fragmented customer journey, incrementality, authentic creative, and how AI and automation are reshaping performance marketing at Perdue. Jack, welcome back to the show.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's great to have you back on. I had a great time chatting with you at the WBR event. Let's dive right in. First off, your background. How did you get into the space?
Well, I would say I definitely didn't begin my career thinking I'm going to be working in e-commerce and retail media. Flashback to 2017, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my career. And my older brother reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have an opportunity for you. I have a small digital marketing agency." It was just me and him. And so that really is where I started with everything in sort of this space. And I spent 7 years with that agency. It was a wonderful experience. And then that was up until I joined Perdue Farms in December of 2023. And at Perdue, that's where I've really started to expand into performance marketing, getting more in depth into e-commerce and retail media in general.
Amazing. What a great background to have both the agency part and the brand part in your skill set. I think that's such a great mix.
I'm happy to have both. I can tell you that seeing both sides of the coin has been very helpful.
Yeah, 100%. Tell us about Perdue. Of course, I think everyone knows the brand, but what does your day-to-day look like? What are you focused on?
Yeah, so I lead our performance marketing team, which is a part of our digital marketing team as a whole at Perdue, primarily across paid social, paid search, and retail media. I would say the simplest way to just like describe my role as a whole is that I'm trying to connect our brand with consumers in the places where they are discovering and researching and ultimately buying food. So as far as the day-to-day goes, it's a mix of strategy and problem solving, which I love. So like 1 hour, I may be reviewing performance across our key retailers like Walmart or Kroger or Instacart. And then, within the next hour, I'm working on an upcoming launch with our brand, sales, shopper, creative team. So, there's really the strategy and problem solving. And I would say a big part of the role is translation. So I'm looking at all of this data, right? Retail media can be very technical, very quickly. And I spent a lot of time translating these platform metrics into business decisions. So taking that data and saying, what does this mean for our brand? Are we, reaching new households? Are we moving incremental units? Should the next dollar go towards search, display, or paid social or paid search? What I'll end it on is there's no perfectly normal day, which for me, it kind of keeps things interesting, right? So, but that's a rundown of my role.
Let's say you've got an hour and you're looking at performance across these different networks and services and so on, kind of like rules of the road. What are you looking for high level when you're trying to, maybe you have a full afternoon and you can really do a deep dive, but let's say you've got a little time and you want to just get a pulse of things. What are you trying to focus on?
Well, I like to look at things in increments because, if I look at just yesterday's data, right, that could tell a completely different story than what's going on over the last 7 days or the last 30 or the last year, right? So I think that's usually
it's an outlier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's always been a big thing for me is, not just determining something's the case because of one small set of data, like really backing it up, going back. Is this now a trend or is this just an outlier? So I start there, and then, the typical metrics you look at are ROAS. That's obviously a big one for all of us, but I love going through the funnel from start to finish, right? Like, how much did it cost to get them to the website or to the retailer website? How much did it cost to get them to add a cart, then to purchase? Really looking at like, where are drop-off points? That's another one for me. If I've got only an hour, can only get so much done, but those stand out, I'd say.
Right. Yeah. What great insights. That's super helpful. And one other question on that, without, let's say, naming specific retailers, but what are you looking at that might be different on one retail media surface versus another? Like, how do you think about those similarly or differently?
Well, some of it is just based on limitations with the retailers. So, for example, one may have new to brand sales. And so if let's just say there's a product where our ROAS is below average, when I have new to brand sales and I see that they're at 60%, that's a lot easier for me to justify. Hey guys, we're, not seeing a great overall return on this, but we're getting new customers into the fold, and that's going to increase incremental sales. We have brand new consumers that are with our brand.
So it's an investment.
Right. So
yeah.
So that's definitely a big one, is just certain metrics that are available on certain platforms and then they're not on others. You can imagine how if a platform does not have new to brand, that situation becomes a little more hairy. So
all right, this is great. At WBR, we talked a little about the traditional funnel being broken or opportunities for improvement. How are you thinking about that today? What's the customer journey like?
We did talk about this. That was a great conversation. I think very similarly, like consumers, they don't move neatly from awareness to consideration to conversion anymore. So when I think of the funnel, I think it's still a useful tool for sure, but it's not really a very accurate picture of actual human behavior, especially in this day and age. I think we talked about this, but someone can see a creator, talking about a product, and then they search for it on Walmart, they read a review, maybe they forget about it for 2 weeks, and then they see it in store and they finally make the purchase because it happens to be on promotion, right? That's not really a funnel. That's that's more like a pinball machine, if that makes sense, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So I think the customer journey today, it's really, it's made up of connected moments. Each interaction can either build confidence or create friction, like just that single interaction with them. So it's really our job to make the moments consistent between social or a product page or when they're in store, right? Like looking at our product.
So well said. I think we found the title for the podcast on that one.
There we go.
That is great. Tell us about Perdue. You're obviously spending a ton of time in retail media. Where do you see the most value? What are some of the key tactics?
I mentioned earlier, I think, about business problems. And for me, it's most valuable for us when it can solve a specific business problem rather than just being one of the tactics that we utilize. When we talk about product discovery, food, like I think about food, it's a very habitual category. Consumers are often buying the same product on repeat. So retail media, what I think it does is it gives us the opportunity to interrupt that routine. And at the exact moment they're shopping, you think about the impact you can make on that routine they have. So I would say it's also very valuable for launches and just distribution expansion. When a product is entering new stores, retail media really helps us create that awareness since it's a brand new product.
Right.
And that's, that sounds basic when I say it, right? But availability is one of the most important and probably overlooked parts of performance marketing, right? Like the best ad in the world won't work if the consumer can't find the product. So, the awareness is super important.
It's such a great point. I remember at my previous company, we had this conversation with a brand, and one of the leaders there said, "Listen, if you could just give us insight at the time into out of stocks, that would be a game changer for us because we can send all this traffic to these products, but if it's not available, to your point, nothing doing." So it may seem basic, but it's kind of fundamental to the business. So it's a great insight. Well, I'd love to switch gears. We talked a little about the new funnel, let's call it the dot plot, if you will, but AI, huge topic right now, automation in lots of different areas. Where are you seeing AI being applied, especially when it comes to measurement and some of the topics you talked about, like incrementality?
Yeah, AI is a buzzword. That's probably an understatement. But the biggest opportunity for me is you can't look at AI as getting the perfect answer. I more so see it as it really helps us process more signals more quickly and identify like where do we need to investigate further. So like today, every platform has its own attribution window, its own definition of a sale, right? Ways of identifying a customer. And I think AI and just automation in general can help standardize those inputs and create sort of a more consistent view across different channels. So it can flag like any anomalies or surface overlap. It can show us where platform reported performance may not align with what we're seeing with our business results broadly. And then for incrementality, I think AI, can help us move from like a more manual analysis, with more continuous learning overall. But it can detect a pattern, but it can't always tell you whether the media caused it or like what was the factor. So, I think the danger is using more sophisticated technology like AI to create a false narrative or like false precision, even an automated dashboard that's beautiful and looks amazing could be wrong, right? So
this episode of Beyond the Shelf is brought to you by It's Rapid. It's Rapid is the platform Pepsi, Mondelez, Instacart, and hundreds of other leading brands and retailers use to build personalized content at scale. Whether that's images, videos, or product descriptions for their product detail pages, shoppable videos or banners for their digital ad campaigns, or sell sheets for sales enablement, brands that use It's Rapid are able to produce high-quality, on-brand content on average more than 80% faster than category competitors. To find out more, please visit itsrapid.ai.
If I hear you right, it really lets you figure out where to go take a look, and it can help you kind of normalize the data, which historically has been a really hard problem. You get very manual, a lot of scripting, all that. You can just do that a lot more efficiently, so you could get to the areas you should focus on. So these are great insights. It reminds me of the old saying about accuracy and precision. We've got it's very precise. We got 100 decimal points, but it's not accurate. So to your point, you really got to watch the data. So it's great. You were looking to automate, I think, something like 90% of reporting, something along those lines. How's that going?
It's going great. We're making great progress. It's funny when I think about it, because that last 10% of the 90% is the hardest. There's just certain reports that, are a little bit harder, but I mean, we're making great progress. And, the ultimate goal is really eliminating that repetitive work that keeps people from, analyzing the reporting.
Yeah.
We don't want anyone on our team spending hours downloading files and reformatting columns and copying numbers,
100%.
into slides.
Yeah.
So we've been working towards, more standardized data pipelines, consistent KPI definitions and dashboards, really just across the board in all of our marketing departments.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. Like the harder part is that the retail media is still fragmented. So platforms use different naming conventions, attribution windows, and things along those lines. So it really comes down to not only using AI, but also having good data governance when using it, so that everything, kind of lines up correctly.
Yeah.
But all that to say, we feel good, since we last talked. I feel pretty good about where we're at there.
You may have a new software platform on your hands. Let me know if you need help with marketing.
I will.
All right. I love it. So looking past reporting, so you've got that. What other areas are you looking at when it comes to automation and kind of putting some of the AI and automation capabilities to work with your team?
Yeah. So one thing we're looking into is campaign setup. That's a huge one for us across paid social, paid search, retail media. There's a lot of manual work involved with that. It's funny sometimes, talking to other teams, they maybe don't understand the full scope of having naming conventions and budgets and product groups and all these different audiences and keywords and creatives. There's so many different elements that when you add them all together, building out, campaigns takes a lot of manual work. So, one thing we're looking at is automation just for the first draft of the campaign build out. So those things that I mentioned, right, between the campaign structure and the targeting and everything along those lines, being able to have that automated would really be massive. So that's one that we're looking into it. And then of course a person would still review it. We're not just going to launch it, live right there, but it would at least get us, 80%, 90% of the way, instead of, starting from the beginning.
Yeah, it's a great insight. So if I read you right on that, you kind of know what has to go into campaign setups. It might vary by platform, but you could get it mostly set up, and then somebody who knows the space and the goals and so on could tune it and get it launched much faster,
Absolutely.
basically.
I mean, it's all in here, right? Like I know everything that needs to go into it, but then you go to,
Yeah.
do it and it takes some time for sure.
Yeah, yeah, this is great. So great opportunities to streamline and leverage some of the latest tech. You also mentioned the importance of being authentic and creator-led content. Tell us about that. What's going on in the content world for you?
Yeah. I mean, authenticity, we talked about that. It's super important to me. I think often people, like when you talk about scaling, scaling with that authenticity, I think at times people try too hard to be perfect. And what I mean by that is that, a brand may say, hey, like we want creator led content, but then they go to the creator and they have, a 3-page script with 12 mandatory talking points and like several round of edits going back and forth. And to me, at
They
that
treat it like a brand brief,
exactly,
basically.
exactly. And at that
Yeah.
point, it's almost like you're kind of taken away from
Hmm.
that authenticity from the creator. It's almost like you have too much control over it and you're not giving them a little bit of free reign. So, to scale authenticity, that's a tough word. Authenticity, in yeah, well, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
I got it.
I think brands should standardize the framework rather than the performance. So be very clear about the audience, the product, the claims, desired action, but then give the
Yeah.
creators free reign, kind of give them a little bit of the information, what's very important, and then let them use their own verbiage and their own authenticity from there. So,
Yeah.
you can also like have repeatable I guess creatives rather than like copies of one video or like recipes, different things like that becomes more of a creative system with different voices. So it's not like you have to build a script for every single creator. You kind of have a framework that you can use.
It almost sounds like you're like the great conductor, but you got to give the orchestra room to play.
Exactly. You got to let, the violins have a little freestyle if they want,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you give them the framework. So,
yeah, yeah. There's so many more questions I could ask you. I want to spend another minute on AI in general. Where else are you seeing that kind of apply? We talked about reporting. We talked about scaling, some of the briefing and the setup and all that. How else are you kind of putting it to work?
yeah, I mean, outside of reporting, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but a lot of times just looking at those business problems that apply to a lot of different branches of the company. And, I think for me, going to AI, not with here's how I think I would approach it, because sometimes you can limit yourself when you do that. But, kind of brainstorming with AI almost and saying like, hey, what are some things that, could address this business question? Or what are some things that I haven't thought of? And
Mm,
in that case, you're not exactly asking it for to go out and do that solution, but you're getting, some different looks at, okay, you could do this, do this, do this. Um, so that's a big one. And I would say we're also using AI internally for collecting documents throughout our history at Purdue and just having easy access to use an agent and be able to say, hey, I think we ran a similar campaign to this 5 years ago. How did that go? Might be a lot
yeah.
harder to go through my inbox, and find that old campaign or SharePoint when we have an agent that can just grab what we need right away.
Yeah, these are great. All right, Jack, so many more questions I have, but I got to wrap it up. I'm going to take you to our rapid rundown, a few fast-paced questions, your quick thoughts. First off, one marketing task you'd automate tomorrow.
Campaign building. I mean, just giving like strategy, budget, products and creative, and build that out. That would be amazing.
Creative format that you are most excited to test.
I would say creator-led videos that are connected like directly to retailers and retailer data. So just content that I guess feels relevant and can be personalized based on where the product is available, whether it's Kroger, Walmart, or all of the different retailers.
Yeah. So you mean a video that's really dialed in for that specific retailer?
You do, yeah. And it's not easy, but
yeah, it's a great one. One retail media metric you think is overrated?
Cliche, but I would say ROAS. I know that was a big discussion, but platform reported ROAS when it's viewed in isolation. It's obviously still very useful, but you may have a high ROAS. That doesn't mean that you're driving new consumers into the brand. You could just be having a high retention ROAS. So that's definitely, I know it's a fan favorite, especially at the conference we were at, but that's what I would say.
That's a great one. All right. One food trend you are paying attention to right now.
I like that one. I would say we're running into a collision of convenience and protein. So consumers want food that is quick and easy. I think of Kevin's. I know Kevin's has been big recently, but they are increasingly wanting more value with it, whether it's high protein, cleaner ingredients, more interesting flavor experience. So it's very interesting. Convenience by itself is no longer enough. You need to be able to combine that with value as well.
Jack, these are great. Thanks for doing our rapid rundown questions. Great answers. How can our audience find out more about Perdue and get in touch with you?
If the audience would like to get in touch with me, I would say LinkedIn for sure. I love LinkedIn. I love the space and connecting with people who are running into similar issues, who are in the retail media space, who have different solutions. I always love connecting with people on LinkedIn. So I would say there.
Jack, you're so approachable. You have so many great insights, practical, strategic. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I hope you'll come back on the show. Thanks for joining me today here on Beyond the Shelf.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave. I appreciate it.
That's it for this week's episode of Beyond the Shelf. If you enjoy the show, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. It really helps us grow. And feel free to share us with your colleagues so they too can hear weekly perspectives from the brightest minds in e-commerce. You can also check us out on LinkedIn, where we post clips from each episode, share Dave's takes on breaking industry news, and much more. Beyond the Shelf is a production of It's Rapid. Our host is Dave Feinlieb, and our producer is Jake Musiker. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Shelf.